It's good. Preview. Connecting. Published. Let's see if we're showing up here. And we are live. Although I'm not seeing anything here. Make sure that the sound is muted. Okay. Very good. Very good. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to hang out here for a little bit while people find it and join. Please, as you're joining, type something in the chat so I know you're here, or type something into the and tell me where you're from too. That's always really nice for me to know where people are from. I keep looking at the side here because this is got a screen over here and a screen over here. This one shows me what you guys are saying, and this one shows me what you guys are saying. So I can actually look and make sure that I catch up with everyone. I'm live. Excellent. Hey Jill. So good you're here. And everybody else as well. Let's see. Just please type in your name, where you are, because I love reading out all the places where people are joining me. And since there's 12 of you watching now, and there's only one comment in the chat, I'm going to ask the rest of you to kind of step up here and join me on. All right. Sorry. Sorry, I'm going to go back to here. So I have less going on. So we got Manx Mix, which is Hazel, from England, Judy from Florida, Barbara from Sweden. Jill, where are you? I forgot. The sound is all okay. It's showing like it's really loud here, but I don't think it actually is. Please tell me. Geron is here, still in Gouda, Netherlands. Excellent. Chrissy is here in New Zealand. She's back in New Zealand now. She was in France for a while. Please tell me if the volume is too loud on the mic, because I can't really tell. Emiliano from Sweden. Hello. Glad you're here. Delightful. Brian from Virginia, Norfolk, Virginia. So welcome everybody to Satsang on this warm Sunday in New York. First warm day we've actually had in quite a while. And hot, downright hot actually. Got up to 90 today. And it's been 3 weeks. Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. It's been 3 weeks since my last satsang. It's been 3 weeks since I was here live. For 2 weeks I've been traveling. There's a lot of things that had to get done, but we're here now. We're all set, and I'm ready to engage with you on the things that are most important to you. Sound is good, but distorted. Okay. Let me pull back on the volume a bit, and that should get rid of the distortion. Thank you, Ron. Maybe too loud. Yep, isn't too great. How about now, guys? I think the volume was just pushed too high. How is it sounding now? I'm relying on you guys to be my audio engineers. According to this, it looks like it's okay. I can pull it back a little bit more, actually, though. It's tough having to be my own audio. Oop, there it went right again. It's tough having to be my own audio engineer. It's getting better, much better. Okay, cool. If this should be okay. If it's too soft now, please let me know. Anyway, hello everyone. Welcome to Satsang. It's all of our opportunities to hang out together, to explore the truth of our being. That's what I like to use this time for. Many of you know I teach a lot of different classes on different subjects. But I like to, once a week, sit down with everyone and just take up the most important subject of all. It's not that other subjects about, living a good life and manifesting a life and understanding the nervous system and understanding how to interact with people and understanding how to reconcile with the energy inside of you. It's not that it's not significant, it's deeply significant, but it's not as significant as this capacity to examine the most important question in the human kingdom, and that's, who am I? We walk around with this self-image. We have an idea about who we are that we walk around, and we literally act that idea out. If you understand any of the stuff of how manifestation works, whatever you hold to be true is going to be made manifest in your life in some kind of concrete reality. And of course, the most essential thing that we regard as true is the ideas we hold about ourselves. Now, these ideas got put into us going all the way back to early childhood. When you're a little kid, you don't have a self-concept. You are just pure self-expression. Everything is innocent, everything is natural, everything is just flowing through you. There's no ideas in your head, you have no concepts of yourself. Everything is direct, undifferentiated. That's the beauty and the wonder of childhood. But at certain times in our lives, things happen to us where we become traumatized. We have experiences that are really quite contrary to that. They're a shock to the system, really, because we're just being ourselves, and suddenly we get in trouble, or we get hurt, or we experience pain. And little by little, that experience of childhood, that Garden of Eden that is childhood, begins to be diminished. And on top of that, there's our culture, represented first off by our parents, and then later by schools and religion and all that sort of thing, that are driving into our psyche this image of who they think we should be. And this image is, of course, extremely limited. It's narrow. It is restricted in every possible way. And so, without even knowing it, I'm not going to say volunteer, because we kind of get forced into it, but there's a natural process that we all have to go through, where we take on all of these ideas about ourselves and believe them to be true. The very first one, the essential one, the one that starts them all, is the idea that I am my body. And of course, if you talk to most people, they'll say, well, of course I am my body. Some may say, well, I'm a soul in the body, but then but everything they know about themselves is directly related to the body. And then sometimes we project on this idea of a soul all the characteristics of the body, like the soul has a gender or has an ethnicity, right? Or that my soul is a white Irish male soul, right? And so this idea of being the body, and all the soul is the idea of an ephemeral version of the body. There's still this limited form that has very particular characteristics. But this idea, I am the body, anchors everything. And of course, if I am this body, then I'm this, and everything else is out there somewhere. There's little me, and then there's this huge universe. And with the thought, I am the body, comes the fear of lack and the fear of death. Because your sense of self now is being informed by the body. So the gender of the body becomes, it's not my body is male, I am male. My body is black, I am black. My body is limited and finite, I am limited and finite. My body's going to die, I'm going to die. That association of our sense of self with the body and everything about it forms the essence of this limited, finite sense of existence that quite literally we mistake for who we are. The fact of the matter is, you our consciousness aware of the body, and the consciousness that aware of the body is not in or of it. Now that really contradicts the modern views of consciousness, which is a total mystery in our to modern science, because there's no consciousness molecule, there's no consciousness atom or function. They can't find a part of the brain which is consciousness. It's the wonder of self-awareness, of being aware of myself, is so qualitatively different than anything else we experience in the world that it should give us pause. But our model of everything in the universe being made out of matter, including me, including consciousness, is so strong that nobody even questions it. But of course, this idea that you are actually consciousness, and that consciousness is not stuck in or limited to any form at all, is what saints and sages have been talking about since time immemorial, going back to Rama and beyond, and through all the prophets, everyone who has ever approached what we would call enlightenment or awakening has seen exactly the same thing. I'm not this body. I am aware of this body, but I was here before this body came. I'm going to be here after this body goes. I am what is aware of everything in my experience, including all my sensations, my feelings, and my thoughts. This is the direction in satsang I like to point people to, because this is the direction in which you are going to discover who you are. Now, you've spent, like me, like everybody else, we've spent our whole lives with our attention focused outwards. I know everything there is to know about my house and about my work and the like. You want to learn something new, you dive in, you go on Google, you get the books, you take classes, you watch YouTube videos, and you're learning, just immersing yourself in some subject that you want to learn about. But when it comes to this subject of me, where do we go? It's not an external thing that I can study in the same way. I can pick up books about psychology and all of that, but are they really describing me? I can pick up books about anatomy, but is that all there is to me? Is my body? Is that all there is to me? Is my psychology? Is that all there is to me? Is my emotionality? And the place to look, to begin to see, to find an answer for yourself, is a very simple, self-evident phenomena. And that is, everything I'm talking about, my feelings, all of my sensations, my emotions, my thoughts, my memories, associations, everything I experience is being seen by something. Everything is being perceived by something. I am looking at my thoughts. Something is looking at my thoughts. Now, whatever that is must be me, because that's clearly where I'm looking from. Now, I've believed that I am this body and that that's actually what I'm experiencing. But then I look a little closer and I go, well, everything that's happening in this body, the structure, the form, the sensations of everything, I am perceiving. Is the body perceiving itself, or am I something else perceiving it? This is a very powerful exploration to make. And don't do it lightly. Don't think, no, I guess you may, some spiritual idea, oh, I'm pure consciousness, I'm the absolute, that's it. Okay, I'm good. Don't do that. That's not satisfying enough. There's a depth to this that needs to be probed. You really are seeing everything. You are perceiving every bit of experience. So, am I what I am perceiving? And if not, then what am I? My body, perceived. My emotions, perceived. My thoughts, perceived. Everything in my experience is being perceived. What is perceiving it. Ramana Maharshi taught the self-inquiry practice. And it was very, very simple. You know, there's a subject-object relationship to everything, right? I see the plants, right? The subject is I, the plants are the object, right? I can tell you all about the plants. And he says, okay, but just step back from that and say, to whom are those plants appearing? To whom is this happening? Who is seeing it? And the whole idea was to try to bring your attention away from what's being seen, what's being experienced, to who's having the experience, to see if you can isolate it, to see if you can just find it all by itself, so that you can look at it, not just look at it in relationship to something else, but look at it all by itself. And interestingly enough, he said that when you do that, the thoughts of I, all the ideas you have about I, begin to fall away. Because the thought of I is being perceived, isn't it? So we're not actually just looking for another thought about I, we're looking for the I. We're not just looking for some nice concept. I am pure awareness, right? We're actually looking for the ultimate subject. That's what spiritual inquiry is all about. That's what satsang is all about. And I'm certainly open to answering any question you have about anything, but don't be surprised if I always try to bring it back to this place where you become more interested in the one who's looking than at what you're looking at. Hi from Slovenia. Hello, Luca from France. Hello, Sarah. All from Monica is saying the sound is better. Very, very good. Puppy, love you, GP, and my fave. Thank you, Puppy. Puppy New. Why is it that I think you are saying that reality does not matter? Because you think reality is what you're experiencing, and I'm trying to tell you that reality is the one who's experiencing it. So I'm not saying reality doesn't matter. I'm saying it really does matter. But what you're calling real is actually temporary and changing, and that reality, if it's entitled to the word that if it's entitled to the name reality, it's got to be unchanged. It's got to be the same everywhere and in all time. It is what is real, and what is real isn't changing all the time. Right? If something's changing, it's not real, right? When forms are constantly changing, you say, oh, that's a car, but I can take that car and melt it down and make a bunch of other stuff. Right? So that car, that form, isn't real in the sense that it's solid and changeless. It's just a temporary gathering together of energy. So I'm not saying reality doesn't matter. I'm saying that it matters a whole lot, because whatever you call real is going to be the quality of your experience. So if you say lack is absolutely real, there's nothing you can do about it, this is the way it is, that is what you will experience. I mean, it's very powerful. What we call real becomes manifest in our life as concrete form. So I'm inviting you to turn your attention from things that are changeable and flexible and not constant, and therefore not really reliable, and bring your attention towards what is changeless. And the only thing you've ever experienced in your entire life that has been changeless is the sense of your own existence, the sense I am. Let's see. If I'm not the body, then I could walk in front of a speeding bus and not be affected. Why do you say that? You walk in front of a speeding bus, the body will become mush. But you won't, because you're consciousness. You'll be aware of it, and then suddenly, boom, the body's gone, this life is gone, this world is gone, and you are experiencing something else. That is the nature of death. Death is not the end of you, it is the end of the body. You will still be here. Here, well, wherever here is. This experience will no longer be had. This experience, which is nothing but the conditioning of energy according to various kinds of patterns and the form of the body and all of that, will no longer be experienced. Your very question says, if I'm not the body, then I could walk in front of a speeding bus. The very question is, you're saying, if I'm not the body, then you say you are the body. I, the body, walk in front of a speeding bus. Now, the body won't do that, by the way. It will avoid that at all costs, so you don't have to worry about that. But notice how we are so used to thinking of ourselves as the body, because the mind cannot conceive of ourselves as formless consciousness. The mind cannot think of formlessness. It can only think in terms of forms. That's what the mind is images, which are forms. You're not that form. And I'm asking you to look for yourself, right? Not to just like take this as like I'm giving you some new philosophical or what's the word, theological point of view. I'm inviting you to look for yourself. The body is perceived by something. What is it that's doing the perceiving? That's it. That's all I'm asking you to do. I can tell you, and many will tell you, it's pure that the consciousness that's perceiving the body is not limited by the body, except when we believe that it is. Right? But I want you to discover it for yourself. Just look and see that there is something perceiving everything we know of as the body is a self-evident fact. Now, the question, what is that? Which is also to say, who am I? Because clearly I'm the one perceiving it. There's not somebody else there perceiving it. You are perceiving your body. So what then am I? Am I the same as the body? Am I different from the body? It's the question you have to take into yourself. Because any answer I give you will be immediately grabbed by the mind and turned into a concept. And then it may be a very beautiful spiritual concept, and people, oh, I got it now. That's what I am, pure consciousness and all that. But it's meaningless. It's just another concept. It's another idea. It's the kind of thing you go, well, wow, this is a wholesale shift in my perception of myself. So give it some time and some effort. Where am I going wrong? Yeah. I mean. And don't worry, the body's not going to do that. John David, you still have to follow the laws of sensory perceptions, but the self remains unaffected. Yep. Yeah, the laws of sensory. I mean, because I know I'm not the body. This body didn't suddenly, turn into an antelope or something. I mean, there's a natural function to life that I'm aware of. I'm just not identified with it as me anymore. I'm seeing it simply as the unfoldment of life. I'm still experiencing life as a man. I still feel this man's body. I feel my experiences. I still have my memories. But I know that I'm not any of those. That I'm the witness of those. And with that comes a lessening in the fear of lack and the fear of death. Right? There's an inherent intuitive sense that I live beyond the body. Now, I can't prove that to you intellectually. Nobody can. Nobody can prove that you're not, right? You have to wait until you get there, right? And if suddenly it's oblivion, everything's gone, well, it's over, right? I mean, actually, nobody will ever know the answer to that, right? Because first off, let's see. The only answer you can possibly know is, I do survive the body, because you'll be there and survive the body. If you don't, there'll be no answer because you'll be gone. There'll be nothing. So it's all or nothing. Puppy says, I enjoy your talk. This time I have a question. Nothing that you've never heard before. With a ha-ha. Very good. My question is, how to see feelings as feelings and not anything else? Very good question. When I feel bad, I tend to blame myself or others, or both, and in general, I act on my feelings. She goes on. First, I don't want to act on them. Second, I don't want to put stories upon stories about the feelings because it makes them 10 times worse. I hate when I blame others and myself. My relationships are getting complicated and they end badly because of this. I want to feel it alone without any stories of others. Thank you. And Pam. Hi from Norfolk. Hi, Pam. We have Norfolk, Virginia, and Norfolk, UK represented. Well, you almost answered your own question, puppy. Um, how do I feel my feelings without going into the story? The very fact that you're aware of the feelings and aware of the story, and that they are actually separate events that have just been connected by habit, means you've already taken a step out of it. You know, for most people, the feeling and the story about the feeling, or the experience and their interpretation of the experience, are the same thing. It isn't, I had this experience and then my mind created a story about it. I had the experience, this is what happened. And it's nothing but the story. So, what you do is you simply let yourself feel the feeling. There's this feeling there. I don't know, maybe it's anger, maybe it's jealousy, maybe it's fear. And you just feel it. Now, you'll notice that your mind wants to create a story about it. You may even find yourself going off in the story. But the moment you become aware that you are, you go, oh, okay. And you just bring your attention back here to the feeling. Just center the feeling in your body. Because the body is always right here and right now. The body doesn't have any stories. The body is pure, direct experience. So you're just with that feeling. And then something come up. I hate it when I blame others, which is also part of the story. Right? There's all sorts of ways in which the stories hook us. Once we realize it's just an interpretation, it's just a habit pattern of the mind, we go, I see that. You get a little bit of distance. But then the mind gets a little bit more clever, right? And then all of a sudden this feeling comes up of blaming somebody else, which is just another feeling running through the system. And the mind says, oh, look, see? You blame me. I hate it. I hate it when I blame others. I go to Satsang. I'm spiritual. I shouldn't be doing that anymore. Boom. You're just caught in a different version of a story. Now, notice none of that is actually in the feeling. The feeling doesn't announce itself as, God, I hate it when I blame others. It's just a feeling, and the feeling wants to seek some relief. Now, before you became more conscious, blaming others, why do they do that to me? They shouldn't have done that, can actually bring a bit of a feeling of relief. Like somehow you can get distracted from the pain. But now you're becoming more conscious. I go, just go back to the pain. It's not going to kill you. Just the feeling can be of loss, it could be of disappointment, it could be of being diminished, it can be a heartbreak. Right? Just notice how the habit is that we want to create a story about it. And we want to create a story about it to keep ourselves from feeling it. That's why the story was there. It's just another defense posture to try to move away from a bad feeling. Right? It just ends up making it worse. It doesn't help, it doesn't heal, it doesn't assist at all. Right? Which is the wisdom that comes as we become more conscious. And when I say become more conscious, I mean you simply are becoming increasingly aware of this tendency to identify with the story, with the flow of thoughts that goes on in our heads. That's what unconsciousness is. Unconsciousness is identifying with the story, believing the story to be true and getting wrapped up in the story. And remember, whatever you believe is true becomes your experience. It's very powerful. Belief, attention, and belief are so powerful. If I believe it, it becomes my truth, and I experience as if it was real. So we have habitually been identifying with that picture of ourselves that's in the story. the first blush of consciousness is, my God, that's a story. Right? The only way you can see it as a story is you've already stepped out of it. Consciousness has emerged. So when I say consciousness, I mean consciously aware of this narrative that's going on that is trying to draw you into it, that you habitually went into it. But now there's some light there that recognizes it as just a story. This is just a habit. Now, it's a habit. So at first, you're going to find yourself constantly falling back into it. It's okay. Its days are numbered. Consciousness has arrived. Consciousness doesn't shrink. It only gets bigger. Now, when there's a blush of awakening, and that's what it is. This is just a story. That is the awakening. Right? Now, when that happens, the environment's going to change. But now, instead of just going into the story's going to change because it's still trying to get you into a story. Now the story's going to change, though. Oh, look, you're kind of awake. Well, this shouldn't be happening anymore. You shouldn't be experiencing this. You should be blissful all the time. You should be, and all of a sudden there's another story that's sucking you in, that's hypnotizing you in, and now instead of being just this unconscious being lost in the sauce, you're this semi-conscious being that should know better. That too is a false self-image that it's just trying to get. That's all the energy system is trying to do, is trying to establish a sense of identity. When in fact, there is no identity in the story. The identity is in you, the conscious one who is aware of the story. But that conscious one has the capacity to identify with the story. Awakening is when you realize that you are, I've been identifying with this. Just like when you wake up from a dream at night, you realize, oh my God, I was completely wrapped up in that, and none of it was actually happening. It was all a story created totally subjectively from my mind. Is that clear for you, puppy? I hope so. Let's see. Anybody else? No more questions? That's it for today? Come on, you're not going to let me off that easy, are you? Let's see if there's any that I missed. Nobody's saying anything. I'm hoping... hi, Dave. Namaste from Dave. Hi, Dave. I'm hoping that I'm still here, that you guys are still seeing me, that I'm still broadcasting. Please say something to me I make sure that I'm still here, because sometimes I can't tell. It looks like everything is working, but thank you. It's clear. Very good. So, Poppy answered, but there is a bit of a delay. So, don't let me off the hook so easily. And don't let yourselves off the hook so easily, too. I know that in Satsang, I tend to go right for the juggler. I'm really attempting to bring your attention fully into that space where you can discover yourself, where you can discover the one who is seeing. And you've got all sorts of ideas about yourself. And when you look closely, you see these ideas that you have about yourself have limited you, they've frustrated you, they've colored your experience, they've robbed you of a lot of happiness. They've made you think you're this small, insignificant, limited, finite, constricted being. And that entire thing is nothing but a picture in your mind. It's not actually true. That's not who you are. So then what are you? If it's not that, then what are you? Now, I can't tell you that Not because it's like a secret, but because it's not something that can be described. Traditionally, um, they would have the practice of not this, neti neti, not this, not that. I'm clearly not that. And the idea was by negating everything, there was actually a practice in mystic Christianity called via negativa, the negative life, opposite life, um, where it was always just, well, I'm not that, because there was a recognition that what I am was not something I could actually point at. It's not a form, an object that I could say, ah, that's it, that's me, I'm on the shelf, I'm good. Any form is going to be limited, isn't it? And the big struggle is this relentless habitual desire and habit of identifying with some form. I am the most essential one being I am my body. And then if I am my body, but that means I am this gender, I am this height, I have these abilities, I am this age, I live in this place, I've had these experiences, then can you see the package that you get stuck with the moment you say I am my body? You have literally created a world for yourself. And you've done that. It's been completely fabricated within your mind. it's, it's so funny when you actually see it. It's been completely fabricated. It's completely imaginary. And it got instilled in you and became your thoughts before you had any capacity to resist or distinguish or discern or say, no, I don't think that's true. And now we're sitting here as if it is true, and until somebody comes along and says, it's not actually true. This is all just a habitual thought pattern that you've become identified with. Right? The I you're referring to when you talk about your body is not the real I. It is just the thought of I, which is a very small, constricted version of you. Papinu says there are good feelings, yep, desires, and bad feelings, fighting desires, staying with the values of the tribe. Yes, Papinu, it seems the bad feelings in Western culture are mangled and tortured, and acknowledging bad feeling is much more important in the beginning and for a while. The more the bad feelings are acknowledged, felt, the more they meld with desire into pure awareness consciousness. That is really the only game worth living. Does that summarize it? That's very good. That's very good. I want to elaborate on it a little bit, because even the name bad feeling is once removed from the feeling itself. Yeah, there are feelings that are naturally uncomfortable to the body and naturally comfortable to the body. There's things that the body naturally moves towards and moves away from. That's very true. If we just see them like that as just kind of go to or go away from kind of a feeling within the body, the feelings themselves then are very anchored in the body and they're neutral. Oftentimes we're having an emotional feeling about something which our minds have labeled bad, and that's where the real problem comes in. That's where we start running away from our feelings, which are uncomfortable feelings, which are in fact oftentimes keeping us from knowing who we are. So when we put our attention on our feelings and let ourselves feel them, even though when we first do it, we're thinking of them as bad feelings, you'll find that in very short order, the badness begins to wear away and there's just a feeling there, and the feeling is very neutral. And oftentimes those feelings, right before your eyes, will begin to transform. They'll start turning into something else. And eventually that feeling may turn into what in fact is a good feeling. Because remember, if a feeling, my natural feeling to express myself, was really suppressed when I was a kid, I couldn't do it. The good feeling of self-expression, the impulse towards that becomes a bad feeling. It's not a bad feeling, but it's been interpreted that way because every time it came out, you got hurt in some way. So now the good feeling becomes a bad feeling, right? Are you following that? And so we now become alienated from our own feeling, and we have a story about the feelings. Now, that story's got some truth to it because it really did cause pain when it happened. But the pain isn't inherent in the feeling, it's in the environment in which it's appearing. So now, if you take off that label, bad feeling, and you just say, there's a feeling running within me. My habit in the past was to try to get away from that feeling. I'm going to move towards that feeling instead. There will at first be some resistance to it, but then little by little, it will begin to transform in front of your eyes. So I wanted to add that to it because it's not like I'm going to sit with the bad feelings until they're gone, because there are some practices that want to do that, and I'm going to release it and it'll be gone and I don't have to worry about it. We don't actually know the nature of these feelings because they've been interpreted by our minds and the stories based on the experiences we had. So this is kind of a way you begin to move back into yourself, away from the external experience and our reactions to things, into the actual inner world itself. This is where we get to a point of self-acceptance, and then we find there's really nothing untoward that has to be accepted. Everything within us is completely and totally natural. And that's the great environment in which you can begin to go beyond even that to that, what I sometimes call the light at the center, this conscious awareness that's aware of the feelings. And now now the entire thing is being perceived by a completely different place, and that place is totally benevolent. It is totally loving. It is totally accepting. It is afraid of nothing, and it welcomes everything. It's the great heart of God, if you want to put it that way, and it lives right inside of you. Does that answer your question there, Puppy Note? Dave says, I like to see this time on Earth as as playing a role on the stage. All the world's a stage, and we're all actors. That's absolutely the case. And what's nice about that is if you realize you're just acting out a role, then you realize that you're not that role. And at the same time, that allows you to act that role so fully and completely that it's just like the best job ever been done. So I strive to be the best GP I can possibly be. That this form does everything it could possibly do, knowing full well that I am way bigger than this form. And this is just the way I'm appearing right now, and that's what this is doing, and at some point it won't do that anymore. It's just going to fade away. I will still be there, right? Because I'm not limited to this particular form. But since I'm here doing it, I'm doing it as well as I possibly can. And it's interesting because people think, well, I'm not the body. I'm become this transcendent spiritual being. Like somehow this all gets abandoned. The exact opposite is true. It becomes completely loved and embodied. I love the resources that are available to me as this particular energy, as this body in this particular time. I love the energy that I have available to me, and I make use of it. So it's the most amazing paradox. You come completely out of it, and then you go completely back into it, but you're no longer stuck in it because you know it's not you. It is the vehicle you have right now. I mean, if I got a truck, I drive a truck. If I got a Ferrari, I drive a Ferrari. If I got a Kia, I drive a Kia, and I make the most of the Kia. You know, GP is my Kia, not IKEA, my Kia. I didn't have to put it together. So I am fully embodying that. I am fully enjoying this instrument. I once had a teacher. I was learning how to play flute. This incredibly great jazz flute player that I was learning from, And I was new at it. I knew a little bit of sax. I knew woodwind instruments somewhat, but I'd focused on drums for the most part, and then on piano. And I wanted to pick up uh, uh, the flute. So I didn't know a lot about it, and so I said to him, "What's the best way to learn how to play the flute?" He says, "Well, you start at the bottom note and you work your way all the way up to the top." And it's like, right, of course. You learn the instrument. You just, what does this note sound like? What does it feel like? What does it take to make that out? How good can you make that sound? Think of your body, the whole human being, as an instrument that you, the conscious center, are playing. It's not what you are. You're not stuck in it. It has some enormous powers, but it is by nature limited. It's defined, which is cool. It's great. I like violins sounding different than violas. I like men being different than women. It's really nice that it works that way, right? So you can completely embody yourself, enjoy every last bit of it, and never get stuck there because it's not who you are. It's just how you happen to be appearing in this moment. And why are you appearing in this moment? Who knows? Who cares? What is the purpose of this moment? To be you, to do this, whatever it might be. Your great life's purpose right now is to just be sitting here in satsang listening and asking questions. That's it. That's your whole purpose in life. My purpose in life is to sit here and do it and answer questions. Right? That purpose in life ends when satsang ends. I turn it off. Then what's my purpose? Well, immediately my purpose: turn out all the lights, put all the lights back where it came from, put the camera back, unplug all the things and straighten the room up. That's my life purpose in that moment. That's what GP will do. He'll do it, and he'll do it as well as he can. Is this beginning to get clear? This sense of recognizing that you're pure consciousness doesn't remove you from the body or transcend the body. It empowers you to completely embrace it, to embrace everything about you and take all of its limits off, all of the imaginary limits off. And you'll find that it doesn't have any. There's no limit on a violin. The range of expression of a violin is incredible. It's not the same range of expression as a double bass. Each of them has their place and their beauty. And what do they sound like together? Oh my God, it's amazing. A string orchestra or the string section in a symphony orchestra. The orchestra is made of a bunch of different things that are complete in and of themselves, and yet they're not the whole picture. You're going to find that consciousness is the whole picture. But you, consciousness, are experiencing it from this one point of view. The entire universe from this point of view. But that same consciousness is experiencing the universe from your point of view. And from everybody's point, and from this plant's point of view. And from this picture's point of view. It's the same consciousness. There are 8 billion people in the world. We all say I. Are there 8 billion eyes? Or are there 8 billion bodies all referring to the same I? Let's see. Rich. So it seems like enlightenment is the mind adapting to an insight into consciousness as a result in this kind of inquiry. Yes and no. I'm gonna do the no version first because it hinges on what we mean by the word mind. Enlightenment isn't of the mind. That is, it is not a quality of thought. It isn't arrived at by thought. It is not dependent upon thought or the flow of thoughts. Enlightenment is the recognition that I am not my thoughts, that I am watching thoughts come and go, and I am not those, and that the entire narrative of that flow of thoughts is not describing me. It is describing an imaginary I that it believes itself to be. I am not that I. That is awakening when you see that. Adapting to an insight. Now, the second half of that, adapting insight into consciousness, is that clear seeing will begin to influence thought, emotion, sensations, and all the programmed responses within the system, which, when the awakening first happens, are still there. Very rarely does it just vanish. Very rarely. Most of the time, there's a period of integration where this deep and penetrating insight, which is simply self-realization, I now know who I am, begins to infiltrate the rest of the nervous system, where the belief of the I that I thought I was, that I now see I am not, is still active as reactive patterns and emotional responses and thought patterns. You'll see that the thought patterns are all revolving around this central idea of the thought of I, which you're now seeing very clearly is not actually you. You believed it to be you, which gave this all power. The moment you step outside of it and you see that that's not you, the power begins to be withdrawn from it, but it's still spinning. And it's going to try to draw your attention back to it because it's fed, it's energized by your attention. And that's where the practice is. Eventually, as it settles in, and you are not only knowing what you are feeling what you are, and that feeling is now living through the body. As that happens, you'll see that the mind isn't just a flow of thoughts, but it is the prism through which a universe is created. It becomes in Buddhism they refer to it as the great perfect mirror mind. It now becomes the perfect manifestation of the unmanifest being. Is that clear? I hope that's not too out there for you. And this kind of inquiry leads you to that place where you see yourself as yourself. That is, you're seeing yourself directly. Pure subject, not yourself as an object. First you find that the I you thought you were is itself an object. That there's something else that's looking at it. Then you move more and more into that, put more and more attention there, until finally this I dissolves, and you find through direct experience the pure subjective state, which is the true I. Am says, I am that I am. Yes, you are that I am. You are that sense of I am. Although that sense of I am can and does identify itself with what is seen. It doesn't actually do that, but that's the best way to express it for right now. But be new. Basically, 100% of the resistance comes from the values of the tribe. Yes. Well, the resistance comes from the innate aspect of the whole physical structure of the human being towards safety. The way that drive towards safety gets conditioned is 100% from the tribe. The urge towards safety is nature itself. It's life itself. How that gets implemented and how that becomes a way in which other important parts of ourselves never get to express themselves is determined by the tribe. So there's the natural drive towards safety that gets conditioned by the values of the tribe. Is that clear? I really want to be really precise about this stuff, which need to be kindly acknowledged and even viewed as massively valuable. Yes and no. The values of the tribe simply created the conditioning. Your energy system, the drive for freedom and the drive for safety, found some way to keep you alive within the context of the tribe. So we can be very, very kind and appreciative of the system, of the mechanism that kept you alive. You're here. You got to the point where you can begin to wake up as an adult, which you are. The awakening is happening, and it couldn't have happened were it not for this system getting into some form where you could get through that period of time. So being positive desire will never work until resistance is viewed as equal on the team. Yes, that's yeah. Resistance. The way in which the drive towards survival is implemented is determined by the tribe. Now, oftentimes, the way it's implemented is a severe limitation on our lives and what we can do. Oh, might that be behind me? And that's where we feel limited and constrained, and we want to expand beyond that. When we attempt to expand beyond that, we will feel the resistance of the pattern that the defensive posture is in. Now, we're really trying to move away from it, and it's saying, no, we've got to stay here. And that's where you're absolutely right. That resistance has to be accepted and seen for what it is. If you fight with it, I got to get rid of this resistance, you'll lose. But if you see, oh, that is the defensive mechanism trying to keep me safe, I drop my argument with it, which means I drop my resistance towards it, and it then can drop its resistance towards you. And the defenses now have an environment in which they can begin to expand and find different ways to protect you. And so that feeling of resistance is coming from a conflict between my desire for freedom and the way in which my nervous system has been programmed to cling to safety. So if I drop my conflict with it, the resistance begins to come down. So in that sense, what you're saying is absolutely correct. And now resistance doesn't become an enemy that has to be fought. You just see it as an indication that there's a conflict that needs to be resolved. And now you just go to the parties who are in conflict and set up and create an environment in which you can resolve it. Dave says, with the mind-body connection, once consciousness, soul, spirit leaves the body, does the mind also follow with the form body? No. The mind is nothing but thoughts, right? At least on this level. There's another aspect to it that you eventually see it for what it is. But at this level, it is nothing but thoughts. Thoughts die with the body. What persists, right, for the unenlightened, what persists is simply an energetic pattern. In Buddhism, they refer to it as the repository consciousness. It's kind of like very deep-seated energies. They'd also call it the vasanas. Deep-seated stuff that does tend to spring up lifetime after lifetime until we bring consciousness to it. But it's more subtle. It's harder to bring consciousness to it because it's not thoughts. It's simply tendencies. And those tendencies will literally create the particular form and circumstances that the next life takes. Until you see yourself for who you really are. When you see yourself as consciousness, you realize that that the vasanas themselves are appearing to consciousness. The solution to karma is not, changing your behavior, because that just creates different karma. That's all it does. The solution to karma is to see that that karma applies only to the person, only to the idea you have of yourself. But that idea you have of yourself isn't just the thought. It is a deep-seated energy, a desire to be someone, this desire to identify with form. Once that is seen, consciousness gets to a completely different level. And at that point, the vasanas themselves begin to dissolve. And the stuff that's kept you going from lifetime to lifetime to lifetime begins to fall apart. And you can do that in one lifetime. Buddha did it, Ramana did it. It can be done, right? Well, maybe it took him 10 lives. Who knows, right? But you can do it now. There's no reason why you can't do it now, because it all comes down to the same thing. I am consciousness only. Now, I don't want you to grab that as a thought. I want you to just put all of your attention on where you are looking from, not what you are looking at. Every time you get you look at something, you see something, you're doing something, you go, to whom is this appearing? It's just a constant bringing your attention back to the thing you want to focus on. I mean, it's when you really love something, you give a lot of attention, don't you? You're always thinking about it, you're pondering it, you're looking at it. The stuff that grabs our attention, also, it grabs our focus. Everything else kind of falls out of your attention. That's what Ramana was pointing at. If your attention keeps going back to the I, everything else is going to begin to fall away, until finally you're going to see the I as it is, the real I, right? But of course you can't see it like you'd be looking at an object, because you're it. So this seeing is not the seeing of a subject to an object. This is the seeing of self-knowing. Knowing itself becomes being. Is that clear? Papinu, it's becoming very, very clear. Narrow is the way. Yes, it is. To the mind, it's terribly narrow. Yeah, the mind feels very constricted in there because there's nothing for the mind to hang on to. And that's okay. You don't need it. You don't need to hang on to anything. Manx Mix, which is Hazel. I keep being in situations with a group of people in which one of the people is open, and it's possible to have inspiring, fun, creative communication with that person, but it feels sort of selfish, as the others can't join in. Oh well, it sounds a bit flippant. It feels great to be in the flow, but awkward when other people who aren't, as if I should suppress enthusiasm. Well, don't suppress enthusiasm. I mean, if it's going in that direction, not everybody's going to be able to go with you. If it's comfortable for the two of you that are in that flow, well, go as long as you can. You know, sometimes just the circumstances you're in just require that you have to interact with somebody else, or the energy is going to get diffused. Don't hang on to that moment either. Don't want to hang on to the flow, because then when you're not in the flow, you're going to suffer. And you are beyond both flow and not flowing. Matter of fact, are you not aware of the flow and also aware of not flow? So whatever it is that is aware of both of those is beyond both of those and not dependent on those. You follow? The moment we say, oh, it feels so good to be in the flow, which it does, if I get attached to that when I'm not in the flow, and nobody can be in the flow all the time, right? I create suffering. Why? Because I'm not accepting what is. I'm trying to this is not good. I got to get back to here. This really happens in spiritual circles. Oh, this is the good feeling, my peak experience. Oh, I see it. I'm enlightened. The Red Sea is parting. Oh my God, I feel terrible. Oh, we're not. Right? That which is seeing both is utterly silent, neutral. It has no preference. Can you see that? So that hanging on to the flow creates suffering. So forget the selfish part. You're just going with it. There's a natural rhythm to all of it, and at some point you might not be able to sustain it. I've been in conversations like that. It happens all the time. I'll be having conversations, especially it's a setting where people are asking me questions, and one is just like, they're right on the verge, ready to pop, but others have to get the others are getting lost. I gotta work with all the energy that's there, because of the relationship I have it being there. There are other times where I can just have in the conversation, it just goes on, and the others just kind of find their own way. They're not interested, they'll move away. I'm under no obligation to keep people amused or entertained. It's not selfish at all. Selfishness is believing yourself to be something other than you really are. It's a false sense of self. If you're following a certain energy that's leading you somewhere, go. It's not going to lead you astray, right? Just don't hold on to it when life changes on you, which it will. Thank you for that. Curious, Curiousnessify. That's a great name. Curiousnessify. Curiousnessification, which is to what? To instill or to embed curiousness in all things. We're going to curiousnessify it. Curiousnessify it. It's funny. Any thoughts on emigran or similar personality and human design descriptions that try to characterize human differentiation? Yeah, they're effective. They work. I've seen it in astrology and some of the esoteric things. I knew a woman in Argentina who was just this phenomenal hand reader. I mean, you could tell your whole life looking at your palm. It was intuitive, though. It wasn't just the palm. I knew a world-class astrologer, enneagrams, various things that describe it. But Myers-Briggs, their psychological tests and all of that. They're all useful, but they're all referring to the person. They're all referring to the I that's in the story. They're not referring to you. They can't refer to consciousness. Consciousness doesn't have any qualities. It doesn't have any boundaries. It doesn't have any psychological characteristics. It is utter openness, spaciousness, and freedom. So they don't apply. Within the story, they will have their uses. But little by little, as you grow spiritually, they become less and less important because they're not referring to you. They're referring to an imaginary person that's part of this story. And in the story, it's great. Like going to a movie, it's a great movie. It's part of the story. It's really interesting and fascinating, and you realize it's not real. None of this is actually happening. And so I'm not investing it with reality. I'm only seeing it within the context relative to this and that. There are people who are enormously perceptive as to what can happen, what can't, what's going to happen and why not, because they can spot trends of thoughts. And the Enneagram monitors trends of thoughts and characteristics of people. I'm not that. Therefore, none of those things apply to me. Karma doesn't apply to me. Limits don't apply to me, to consciousness. When I say me, I'm talking about you too. They do not apply to who you really are. So I hope that answers it for it. So I never put those things down. There's some people that are really into it, and I've seen people who are really good at it. Tarot cards and that sort of thing, angel cards, wonderful, fine, right? But when you're ready to step into the ultimate non-dual truth of your being, you're just going to leave that. You're going to leave that behind. You're going to step out of everything. I mean, ultimately, you leave Buddhist teachings behind. Non-dual, all teachings get left behind, and you're simply yourself, pure, unfiltered, unlimited being. Time check, 5:07. Okay, we're good. See, you got that one? Luca, if the reality is subjective, the only thing that exists in each moment is my field of perception in that moment? It's a question. Yes. Now, don't try to take that and turn that into, so the world only exists. Don't try to turn it into a subject-object thing. On a practical level, even if there is this totally objective world out there, we will never know it. We are all limited by our perceptions. The only thing I ever experience is my perception. So when we're talking about practical, everyday life, the world I am living in exists in my head. That is simply the world I actually live in. Is there another one outside of that? Scientists say yes. Non-dualists say no. I say, I don't care. It wouldn't matter. It's totally irrelevant. I experience my beliefs, my perceptions. What I say is true is what filters everything out, and that's what I experience. So for all intents and purposes, My reality is 100% subjective. As subjective during the waking state as it is in the dreaming state. And so for me, the only thing that exists in the moment is what is ever within my realm of perception. That's all I know. Outside of that, no idea. And it's okay. I'm not looking for objective truth. I'm looking for the subjective truth. I'm not trying to find out about all this. I'm trying to find out about this. I'm trying to find out the one who is perceiving. Because, see, we can really isolate this and find truth in it. Because even if my perceptions are completely limited and I cannot see it all, even if my perceptions are completely delusional, and this entire thing is a big hallucination, me experiencing it is not a hallucination. I know that for a fact. Everything I am experiencing may be the Matrix. I may be in a straitjacket staring at a wall at some institution somewhere, yelling and thinking I'm giving satsang. What I'm experiencing is completely subject to interpretation and distortion and everything. So I go to what I know to be true, and that is I am experiencing. That is not an illusion. That is not subject to deception. I cannot be deceived into thinking I exist. There's nobody that clever that can make me think that I exist if I don't. So I've got a place to put a stake in the ground. All of this, questionable. This, not questionable, self-evident. So that which I know to be absolutely true, what is that? And since I can't trust any of my perceptions to tell me what that is, they could easily be distorted, the only thing I can do is put my attention on that, on what I know for a fact, this silent, perpetual, unchanging sense of my existence. And the fact that I am self-aware. That's all you need. That will take you everywhere. Ahad says, I can't pronounce your name, man. I'm sorry. Anhad, Anad, I can get that much. According to some Indian gurus, there's no such thing as mind. Could you explain why that is? Yes, and they're right. There's no such thing as mind as an object. We say it like I use the example of like we say the wind blows, right? There's no wind blowing, right? It's a word that describes a very elaborate function, and that's simply the motion of air molecules. We call that wind. We call it blowing, right? We even picture a big cloud of sky with puffy cheeks going blowing, right? So the wind blows. There's no wind. There's not a thing wind. It's a name that describes a complex system. So there's no mind thinking. There are only thoughts. So when they say there is no mind, that's what they mean. There's no mind. We say, oh God, my mind is doing, your mind is doing nothing. There's no mind doing something. Mind is the word that describes this complex collection of patterns of thought. The thoughts are obvious. Thoughts are happening. I see thoughts. I experience thoughts. I think thoughts. Thoughts are being thought. And as thoughts are appearing to me, these phenomena that I'm experiencing that I call thought. Right? There's no mind that's thinking them. There, in fact, is no I that's thinking of them. Even the thinker is a thought. There's just the thought. When you see that, we'll stop thinking of, oh, my mind's giving me such a problem. I've got to quiet my mind. As if there's this thing that's throwing thoughts at you, right? You can see that's an illusion. It's not true. That's not what the mind is. But the way the pattern of thought is, it tends to form abstractions, right? So we use this word mind, which is nothing more than like the wind blows, but then mind all of a sudden starts taking on characteristics, a whole story about itself, as if it were an entity, and it's not. So the mind exists when you see it as simply a flow of thoughts. That's what's happening. But it doesn't exist as a thing separate from those and causing those thoughts. Is that clear, Anad? Is that clear to everybody? I hope. Right? Same thing with ego. There's no ego. There's no such thing as an ego. Ego is simply the collection of thoughts about I. That's it. All the I thoughts. I am this, I am that, that's the ego. The ego is not a thing that is generating bad thoughts. There's nothing there. There's only the thoughts. But when we imbue those thoughts with power, when I identify with those thoughts, I give birth to what I call the ego, which I also sometimes have started calling the robot. I'd love to hear, Curiousnessify says, excellent, good. I'm glad you got that. Great. Yeah, because I never want to criticize any practice that's helping people progress and learn and feel better about themselves and grow. It's just that I promote what to me is self-evidently the ultimate one, that all of those roads will eventually lead here. Papinu, when duality dissolves, do you get promoted to a higher level with a greater duality, so you can learn the same lesson of dissolving over and over again? Does duality eventually cease into pure awareness? Yes, the latter. I shouldn't say it ceases. Inherent in your question is something very common that people get into non-duality, that somehow duality is a mistake. You can't have non-duality without duality. They're two sides of the same coin. Duality and non-duality happen together. The many is one. You can't have music without a song. Music is the non-dual. Songs are the dual, are the dualistic appearance of it. The two are one. The ultimate non-duality is that there are not two. We'll stop going, that's non-dual and that's dual, and we'll see it's this unified oneness. And that oneness is neither dual nor non-dual. So it's not there's different levels of duality. And you see that duality isn't a mistake. The only mistake is when I believe myself to be something that is limited, a form. Now, consciousness always manifests as form. But when I believe myself to be the form, rather than the consciousness that this is giving expression to, now I have created the duality that is constricting. I've identified with the form, and now I have limited my life. Now I have taken infinite consciousness and compressed it within a single form, a form which is nothing other than the expression of the infinite consciousness. Is that clear? So at that point, duality and non-duality, they disappear. They too are a temporary teaching technique. They're a concession to the mind, and eventually they too will just fall away into this infinite ocean of divine love, of divine oneness. Alex, hi GP, how to stop addiction to spiritual concepts, literature, YouTube videos, etc. I find myself spending too much time on intellectual accumulation. Well, good. First question I'd ask is, take a look at something inside of you woke up and said, you know, I'm spending too much time in it. But that's even a judgment. Before you said I'm spending too much time in it, what you recognized was you weren't getting any answers. It wasn't satisfying. So what I would encourage you to do is not just try to make yourself not do it. That never works. But instead, focus your attention on the one who is seeking. Turn away from the books, the YouTube videos, to the I. I am watching a video. Oh, I can see the video. Who's watching the video? Now that brings your attention back here, and the answer will be, well, I'm watching the video. Okay, well, who is that? Who is that? And let yourself get absorbed there. That's the way it happens. Now it becomes the direct inquiry into yourself. Every bit of spiritual teaching out there that's worth anything, that's what it's telling you to do. Turn away from that to here. Not because there's something wrong with this, it's just because our attention's been outward focused for too long and we've forgotten who we are. I know what this is. I don't know what this is. Oh, of course I'm watching all this stuff. I'm trying to get all this stuff because I'm trying to find out what this is. Well, why don't I go directly to this and find out? That's what I'm encouraging. And there'll be some resistance to it because the seeking mind is a habit. And it's one of the phases that we have to go through. We have to. You know, the one that's content with materiality has got to become discontent with materiality, materialism, and begin to seek. And then that seeking reveals certain things. There's a maturing that takes place, and then little by little, you can see that even the seeking itself becomes a bit of an addictive pattern. And you go, well, what is it that I'm actually seeking? Well, I'm seeking myself. Well, I'm right here. So what I'm really seeking is to know myself directly. I know myself through concepts, which is why I feel unsatisfied. Concepts are unsatisfying. You know, we can talk about oranges all day long. Totally unsatisfying. But the moment you taste an orange, you don't need any more knowledge. So taste the orange. Right? Really become the number one thing in your life is to know who I am directly. Not through ideas and not through concepts. You're going to find that every concept you have of I is itself just a thought, one removed from you. You've identified with it, and you're going to find out that you actually weren't even the one seeking the books. You weren't the one watching the videos. There was this other imaginary character in there. You had your own little Mickey Mouse in your head that was doing it, but you thought it was you. That's the thought of I. And when you isolate that by constantly coming back, well, who am I? Who am I? This begins to dissolve, and this starts to get more and more apparent. Does that help you, Alex? Torrens Garden. Hi, Torrens Garden. The robot we are programming, there is no mind, but all is mind. That is here. There is no out there. Yes, that's true. But that needs to be a felt, lived experience. And you'll know you're feeling it and living it because it has a characteristic flavor to it. And that flavor is happiness, contentment, fearlessness, playfulness. You'll begin to know that these things are moving out of just being concepts and into lived realities simply by the way you feel, by the way you react, by the openness and spaciousness, by the... And eventually you'll find that when something is just kind of a concept, it tastes kind of flat. You know, it's kind of like beer that's been left out all night. It's still beer, but nobody wants to drink it. So really let this stuff move into the heart. I can't emphasize that enough. And I can tell you truthfully, because I got stuck in my head for many, many years. I thought I really had it, and I could not understand why I had just this illumined mind, and life just wasn't working. Well, I was inspired, but not awake. I was still very identified with the idea I had myself. The idea had become very rarefied. It become very sensitive, become very nuanced. It become very sophisticated. but it was still an idea. and it's still going on. I don't claim to be a Muji or a Buddha or a Ramana. So I'm still vigilant about it. I'm still watching. I'm still watching where I get identified with the thought and just keep coming back. Right? Who am I? Who am I? That question, wanting to know who you are directly from the place from which you're seeing it, becomes the most important thing in your life. And it will. Because everything else, it's not that other things aren't important, it's just they now draw their relative importance from that which is absolutely important. All of this is relative. And when it's relative just to each other, there's no stability, there's no touch point, there's no reference point. And so it's very unstable and disappointing and all that. But when all of the relative stuff finally becomes related to the one thing that is absolute, which is your being, everything stabilizes. Because now there's a center. There's a fixed, unmoving center against which everything relative can move and orbit and come and go as it needs. I'll pick up Torrens again. She's a little bit further down. Do you see the face from the shadow? The water in the picture behind you? The face in the shadow. Which one? The elephants? There's three shadowy faces there. Or is there another one that you're seeing? Maybe you're seeing another one. It's a great picture, isn't it? My son gave that to me. So I see those faces. I don't see another one. Maybe you see one. Torn. Anad says, great explanation. Gee, thanks. Just one question. So if there's no mind as a thing, right, as an object, no, there's no mind. Does that mean there's no world either? And nothing really exists? Wow. Okay, so you opened the big question, huh? It's the snake in the rope. The world as an object existing independent from perception does not exist. It's not there. The world as a word describing experience does. These mysterious statements from the Buddha, like it both exists and does not exist, was always referring to that. It exists as a perception. It does not exist as a fact, as an objective fact, independent of the perception. Nothing exists outside of perception. Perception is the source of what it's perceiving. This is Buddhist, this is the Hindu philosophy, the Advaita philosophy. In the West, what we're perceiving exists independent of my perceiving of it, and so perceiving becomes seeing, physical sight and the like. In the East, in the non-dual Advaita approach, perception and what is perceived arise simultaneously. They're one. And therefore, for me to say the world exists objective, separate from my perception, I say, no, the world does not exist. If I see the world as simply my perception, now it exists as a changeful perception. Right? So now it's not a fixed thing. It's the snake in the rope. If I project upon that the qualities that this world exists independently, then I say the world does not exist. The Shankara, the great sage who kind of revitalized the Advaita strain that ran through Hinduism and it kind of disappeared. He brought it back. Was talking to a group of Brahmins, and this idea that the world is an illusion, only Brahma exists, has been is a keystone of the Hindu. The world is an illusion, right? There's no world, doesn't exist. Only Brahma is real. And Shankara, talking to these people, voiced that. He said, the world is an illusion. They went, yeah, yes, absolutely. Only Brahma exists. Oh, yep. And then he threw this in. Brahma is the world. What? It brings it full circle. What you are perceiving is the sum total of existence. Call it the world, call it the universe. Doesn't matter. It's all within you. It is all in the perceiving. The perceiving and what are perceived are one. They arise simultaneously, and they are both perceived by the same entity. The only thing that does absolutely objectively exist, and that is you. The consciousness that is the recipient of the perceiving. The consciousness to which the perceived and the perceiving arise. That which is aware of everything. That is the absolute, the ultimate. The shadow of the elephant in the water is a profile. Oh, I'm not seeing it, but yeah, it could very well be. Could be by intention and could be accidental. Beautiful. The mind is the world. Yes, the mind then is the world. Yes, that's absolutely true. And Buddhist would say that. The mind is the world. The mind doesn't exist. The mind is the world. Right? Because the mind is just the sum total of everything that's experienced. It's just another way of saying of perception. You could see it as the lens through which things are perceived. So the world is perception, perceiving, perception, the mind. They all point to this exact same one thing, and it's all being perceived by awareness, by the consciousness. So we are awareness of the mind world, which contains the brain, body, other people, trees, and rocks. Yes, all of it. The brain is an object in perception. Materialists have wrongly believed that it's the brain that is creating perception, and it's not. It's in perception. It's being perceived by it like everything else. Everything is perception. Perception, perceiving, seeing, knowing is the substance of what is seen, perceived, known. They're not two, they're one. The subject-object relationship doesn't actually exist at all, really. Boy, we've gone really deep here today. I'm loving it. Let's see. Nothing really. Okay, I got that one. Demetrius said, years and years ago when I was having waking ups through art, I kept saying, I feel so real. But I couldn't communicate it. Just a few friends. So then I had a fall. Always sending that I'd come back, but I still have sensing that I'd come back, but I still have trouble trusting it. Well, I would ask you then, okay, who experienced the waking up through art? Who experienced the trouble communicating it? Who experienced having the fall? Who experienced sensing that it could come back? And who is still having trouble trusting it? If you look at all of those, you'll see those are all experienced phenomena, and that the same thing is actually having the experience. The awakening is not a quality of experience, it's seeing the one who's having the experience. You follow that? It's every one of those you go, okay, well, who had the fall? Was the fall not something that you perceived? There was an experience that was had? And the one who had the fall is actually part of that experience? Who witnessed the fall and the one having the fall? There's a very subtle awareness that's seeing all of that. The entire experience and the one who's having the experience are all appearing in this field of perception. Curiousnessify. I think it was Nisargadatta that made a distinction between the absolute and consciousness. Yeah, he did. Also in the Course in Miracles it says consciousness is still a part of the illusion. Any thoughts? It's just a matter of semantics. Nisargadatta referred to The absolute cannot be spoken. The ultimate truth cannot be spoken. How can it? There's nothing there to speak. It's prior to thought. It's prior to speaking. It's prior to everything. It's even prior to the sense I am. You're aware of yourself, right? But if you look very, very subtly, there's something even aware of that sense of being. That itself, there's nothing aware of that. So it cannot come into the field of view. Anything you can perceive, however subtle, is being perceived by that. That is the absolute. The sense I am is, you could call it the firstborn. It is the conscious awareness of the absolute of itself, but it's still just an image of itself. It's not the absolute. That's what he referred to as the consciousness, and it's that consciousness that I am, and I am the body. It can begin to identify with everything that arises with it. The sense of I am is the sense of being. Everything in the universe has a sense of being. These plants have a sense of being. This headset, there's a sense of being there. Everything is in the sense of being. So with the arising of the sense of being is an entire universe. And that sense of being can then identify with something and become the person. What we're doing is we're liberating that sense of being from identification with the person. We bring it back purely to the sense of presence, and then that sense of presence eventually simply dissolves into the absolute. But you can't describe the absolute. Don't try to conceive of it. How can you? It's trying to conceive of infinite space with nothing in it. Give that a try. We can conceive of infinite space because we see the universe and it's really big and stuff's really far away, and so we have this sense of it. Take all of that out, and how do you conceive space? You can't. You can't give no expression to it whatsoever. That is a pointer towards the infinitude of the absolute. Does that help? It was almost like I, Demetrius said. I guess you're responding to my thing of who was it that saw it. It was almost like I. Go a little bit more further than that. What is that I? That sense of I. Fabio Pinto Music. Oh, music, great. I've had experience that made me think I had a glimpse into possible future reincarnations. I prefer to think it's an illusion, because I didn't like my fate. I think it's possible to know future lives. Yes, it is. I had that experience myself. But once I went beyond that self, those no longer applied to me, so it was no longer my fate. When you are identified with the person, there is a destiny, a pattern to the person. Right? It's just patterns of thoughts and feelings and emotions. As long as I'm identified with that, they're going to have a pattern. They're going to have a life that they're going to fulfill. There's going to be a destiny to them that will be undeniable. The moment you are no longer identified with it, none of that applies to you anymore. And this will have a destiny. This new insight will influence it. It'll change it. It'll shift it around a lot. There's a certain tendency, but you don't care anymore. There's a beautiful statement from Nisargadatta talking about the awakening, and he said, I left my human life to fulfill its destiny. I remain as I am. He was no longer identified with it, which of course changed it. I mean, he wasn't, operating his store anymore. He wasn't wandering around the Himalayas anymore. The story responded to this new energy. And so, no, there's no ultimate fate. There is an inevitable result of a pattern as long as you are identified with the pattern. The only way out of that is to realize that that's not who you are. So that pattern isn't you anymore. And at that point, you don't care. And the energy goes out of it and something different happens. So no need to be concerned about that. That's great. Demetrius, can you talk about dealing with the guy in my head that says, oh, this is it? Every time I start feeling oneness, oh yeah, I know that guy well. It's like, I made it, yeah. It's simple. The voice in your head isn't you. Really simple. It's a big revelation. That voice in your head isn't you. That's who have started referring to as the robot. Um, Eckhart Tolle refers to it as the pain body. It's just the habits of thought. It says I. This is why it's tricky, because it says I. I am. Oh, I got it. If you take your attention off of the got it part and just put it on the I and go, who are you? Because this is a thought, an I thought appearing to you. Now you've got a clear choice. Am I going to identify with this thought? Or am I going to am I just going to be aloof from it and look at it? There's a feeling that comes with it that says, oh, there's that thought again. That means I'm out of it. I'm not going to get to the oneness, right? That is more thought. It's subtler. It's almost silent. It's under the surface, right? That's the thought that reacts to that first thought of, ooh, I got it. Oh, I shouldn't say that. Oh, I'm losing it. I'm losing it. All of that is being witnessed by you. That one is witnessing it by you. Is it falling out? Is it falling away? Is it worried about getting to itself? Is it wondering whether it's going to make it or not? Is it concerned about an experience of oneness? Okay? Oneness isn't an experience. Oneness is the reality. Reality is just not an experience that's had in mind or body. Reality is what's experiencing. Reality is the living, absolute consciousness. Is that clear? Fabio says, that's amazing. Thanks, GP. You're right. Demetrius, thank you. Wow. Wonderful. Great. Right. Notice, I keep doing the same thing. Drawing your attention back from what you're experiencing in an attempt to isolate the one who's having the experience. And this is the essence of non-dual inquiry. We've all been educated to focus our attention on what is being experienced. And we know it really well. We collect all sorts of information. But then you ask, okay, well, who's the one having the experience? And the best we can do is describe our bodies. Oh, I'm George. I was born here. And in our world, you don't need anything else. People don't ask you, well, no, who are you really? That's enough. That's enough. That's good. You get the job. This becomes this becomes a matter of importance to us because this is changing and insubstantial. We're never going to find lasting happiness here. Duh. It's going to change. I'll find something for a minute. Ooh, I got it. My God, it's beautiful. Where did it go? And then it's gone. And then now we're lamenting because we don't have it. All the while ignoring the consciousness that's experiencing both of those. And if it can experience the elation and the deprivation, it must be bigger than and beyond both of those. That is the self. That is who you want to get to know. And the only way you can get to know it is subjectively. You can't talk about it because it's not a thing you can talk about. So words, if they're well used, always point you back to this same place. This self-examination that leads to self-realization. That's why they call it that. Oh, this is what I am. All right, everybody. Oh, somebody just joined from the Dominican. Hi, Juan. Good to have you. 5:43. It's been what almost going on 2 hours. I think that's good for today. Wonderful questions, everybody. And thank you questions were all very, very deep and probing, and these were all what Muji calls freedom questions. They're not questions about just how to fix and make our lives better. How do we come to know who we are? Those are the questions that turn me on. Demetra says, beautiful. So, I think we'll draw it to a close for today. Thank you all you wonderful folks for being here. Um, thank you for enjoying, for bringing the questions, for focusing your attention, for giving yourself permission to take a chunk of time and dedicate it for this level of inquiry. It's rare. It's very rare. You're amongst a handful of people that even know that such a thing exists, let alone are actually actively pondering it and pursuing it. It's an enormous blessing. You have been brought here by grace, and to quote Rumi, the power that brought me here must bring me home, and it will. You know, the interest, the impulse, the leading that brought you here is going to bring you all the way. I guarantee it. All right, everybody. Thank you all. Gee, love to you and everyone. Have a great week. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Lots of thanks and love and all of that. Thanks. Great. Thank you, everyone. Namaste. Slide. Oops.